97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with Geoff Mosher, powered by InsideTheBirds.com.
We expect to win every time we step on the field. That's just the mindset that we have.
Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
All right, Football at 4, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. Check out the latest InsideTheBirds.com podcast. They've got NFC East tape reviews with NFL Films' Greg Cosell as they look at the Giants, Redskins, Cowboys, Eagles. You can check that all out, InsideTheBirds.com. With Geoff Mosher, Mosher Monday, Football at 4, here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. We got a lot of stuff to dive into today. We will also get into the Ask ITB questions that were not answered during the Inside the Birds podcasts with Geoff now. But as we bring him in on the Mosher Monday Football at 4 edition here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Mosh, what's up, pal?
What's up, fellas? How you doing?
All is good. Hopefully the weekend was good for you, and we are back into really the stretch run, man. We got the month of July will be here this week. We're going to be less than a month from NFL training camp. So let's start there and kind of get your pulse on a month from now. Will we have training camp as we know it?
I think we will have training camp, at least the start. And you alluded to some of the Inside the Birds work that we've done lately. We had Andrew Brandt on our Inside the Birds TV on our YouTube channel. And one of the questions that we posed to him based on his, knowledge of the NFL, being a former president for the Green Bay Packers and also working alongside Howie Roseman with the Eagles was, does he feel like the NFL really will have a season as normal as possible this year? And he said the NFL, like other sports, he believes will attempt and do everything possible to have a season, to start on the right time, to follow their normally laid out schedule with special protocols. But the big question is whether it'll be able to finish. Obviously, that is the question that has to be answered. So training camp for the Eagles would start next month. And my gosh, in just a couple of days, we'll be able to say this month in 2 days, right? And so if it starts, from what I heard, that Jeffrey Lurie would like to have the players arrive at least 2 weeks early to the start of camp so that they can get tested and quarantined if necessary. And so if that's the case, Mike, that means you're looking at sometime maybe next week, by the end of next week or early the week, say starting July 12th, 13th as possible arrival time for some guys. And I think if that happens, you'll start to get a little bit more news as far as the Eagles. Are they going to sign another defensive end? Are they going to sign another offensive guard to compete at right guard there? So we'll see what kind of schedule the Eagles lay out for their quote-unquote start of training camp and whether any news follows with that.
Yeah, we know there was a signing over the weekend, so that was a big one. Let's get into that with Geoff. Cam Newton, this is a interesting timeline. It happened on Sunday evening, on a random Sunday that the Patriots decide, hey, you know what we're going to do? Let's sign Cam Newton. What did you think of it? I mean, it doesn't seem like it's a big risk here. I mean, they did not pay a whole heck of a lot of money to get a former MVP. A lot of people thought, hey, this is a team that needs a quarterback, and they tried to put those, fires out by, nope, we got Stidham. We think he's the guy. But Cam Newton, Patriots, how do you think the fit is for Cam and Belichick?
Well, first of all, it's a great low-risk, high-reward deal for the Patriots, right? As you mentioned, it's a one-year deal, not a whole lot of money for a guy that, when healthy, plays at a very high level, and when healthy is certainly better than the quarterbacks that they have on the roster now, Jarrett Stidham and I believe Brian Hoyer. Now, there's some complications to this, right? Because while it's a brilliant signing because of the upside, you have a lot of obstacles that we talk about with the Eagles. We talk about with every team that has rookies and newcomers. There's been no camp, so he has no acclimation to their playbook. I don't know what his health. I have to assume he'd be able to pass a physical. That's why they signed him. So that's good. But he hasn't played football in quite a while. So he has a new playbook to learn. no mini camp to help learn it or get familiar with teammates. He's got his own personal injury history that he's got to overcome. And so he's going to report to camp probably behind the eight ball, if that's imaginable when we're talking about Jarrett Stidham or Brian Hoyer, but he will be behind the eight ball. And that's why I think they're calling it a competition. And obviously his ability to capture that starting job will be dependent on how fast he can make the acclimation, learn the playbook, warm up with Josh McDaniels. And by the way, I think that's a phenomenal pairing for him to be able to be coached by Josh McDaniels. And I do think the Patriots will turn back the clock a little bit. I think they're going to try to run the ball a lot this year. Hopefully their center will come back healthy. He missed all last year, and the left tackle as well. And they don't have a lot of weapons. That's another thing that Cam and Brian and Jarrett Stidham are all going to have to deal with. I mean, their wide receivers are basically Julian Edelman and N'Keal Harry, and I'm missing somebody else from last year's crew that just was okay, nothing special. So we'll see. But I mean, certainly the upside and the potential is there. I liked all the reaction yesterday. It's like, oh, the Bills are now no longer the favorites of the division, and that lasted only 3 weeks or whatever. I still think the Bills with their defense are going to be very, very tough. And, we still have a lot to see from Cam Newton before we just declare that this thing is going to be a Patriots dynasty continued.
The news dropped the same exact time pretty much as another scandal for the New England Patriots. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, they record the Bengals, they get caught. Is this similar to baseball where every team does it? The only reason why I would think it's not is because the only team that consistently gets brought up is the fact that it's the Patriots. All the time, it's always the Patriots. So, what are your thoughts on another cheating scandal?
Yeah, it's interesting. I thought a third-round pick, I've struggled with, is that enough of a punishment? I know there's the $1.1 million, and there was something
and
else
also
too.
with this Cam Newton contract, there's a way to get that comp pick back in another year. So it's almost as if Bill Belichick knows the system and he's beating it.
Yeah, pretty much. But he does get fined the third-round pick, and that's a third-round pick is a player who. Forget what the percentages are. You want that player to, at very least, be a role player, an impact role player, and at most, you're hoping he becomes a starter, right? I mean, if he winds up being a long-term starter or a Pro Bowler, you really hit gold on that. But so that's a significant pick. But for a team that was now hit for the third time for with penalties, I felt like maybe that wasn't enough. I thought maybe they should be docked a little bit more than just $1.1 million in a third-round pick.
And that lies, what we talked about earlier, Broads, and Moshe will bring you into this was, did the penalty deter other teams, or is this a slap on the wrist? And that other teams, we keep saying, other teams do this, but why is it the Patriots are the only one that ever get in trouble for it and that ever gets out in the open on?
Yeah, that's a really funny question, right, about whether or not these penalties deter other teams. When how many other teams do we consistently hear of getting docked for violations of league rules? I can think of maybe the Atlanta Falcons for piping in loud music. I think they got docked a little bit. And the Ravens have gotten docked a couple of times for having too much practice time, past the allotted time. And they've both been penalized for that. But, I mean, other than that, who has really challenged the Patriots for, pushing the envelope on cheating? Nobody. Right. So I don't even know if the message is really being sent.
I want to get your thoughts too on the Newton. This guy was the MVP of the league. They were 15-1. They went to the Super Bowl. There's been a lot of talk about the amount of hits he's taken and all that, but putting Cam Newton on the Patriots, does that in your mind make them, or were they already a Super Bowl contender, or does this now keep them in that conversation?
Well, I don't see them as a Super Bowl. I don't look at them right now and say that they're ready to go pound for pound, elbow to elbow with the Kansas City Chiefs, with the Baltimore Ravens, who are going to come back pretty strong. I still think the Steelers with Ben Roethlisberger are going to be a very good team, especially with that defense. This is a Patriots team that really, really struggled last year against good teams. Yes, they beat the Eagles, but they lost, I believe, to the Ravens, right? And they had lost to Kansas City. I mean, they struggled to score, and now Tom Brady's not their quarterback. Is Cam Newton going to play better then Tom Brady, again, he has to prove that he can win the job outright to begin with. They just don't have a lot of very good offensive weapons, to be honest with you. So I don't look at them as being in the Super Bowl conversation. I never discount Bill Belichick, and I honestly think if you take a look at their roster and if they win 8 or 9 games or 10 games, that's, again, Bill being a genius. I know they have a very good defense, but you do have to remember last year that their first 10 games, when they were on that historic rate of points allowed or points against being low, they were playing the Buffaloes. They were playing the Jets. I mean, they were not playing really good offensive teams. But when they did later in the year, it's not like they were holding those teams to 10 points too. They were getting scored on. So I don't know how good the defense is going to be this year. Yes, they still have to play the Jets and the Bills, and I don't know if Sam Darnold will have mono again. I think things fell into place for that defense pretty nicely last year to be historic. I don't know that they can carry the team again.
All right, let's get into this. I know you had Andrew Brandt on. You referenced that Inside the Birds podcast, and you can check out InsideTheBirds.com for the ITB TV and the podcast and all that. And I'd like to hear the take from him. Here's a guy who, worked on contracts, was an agent, worked in the front offices, knows the business of the NFL, and about what could happen this year if there are no fans at games this year. I mean, what's the long-term ramification of something like that?
Yeah, so Andrew was pretty clear that, and I think most people know, is that the majority of NFL revenue comes from the TV contracts and the media. So that part should still be in place as long as people are watching games and people are broadcasting games, and that as long as games take place. If there are no fans, though, I believe Andrew said that represents about 20% of overall league revenue. So that represents a 20% drop in revenue, and that threatens to then lower the salary cap for next year and the year, and maybe the year after, who knows, but at least for next year, because the revenue is going to be less this year than in years past. And that's going to hurt the team like the Eagles even more, because as we've discussed, the way the Eagles' contracts have been structured with their restructures and kind of the kicking the can down the road mentality that Howie's been able to navigate, they are well over what the projected cap for next year is. And they're going to have to make a lot of decisions. Some will be easy. Some guys are going to be older and not coming back anyway. Some won't be easy. But the projected cap is a cap that is going to be more than this year because the salary cap historically goes up, right? If the cap goes down, then the Eagles are even more jeopardized because of their cap situation, because they're already so over what the projected cap is going to be. And so the Eagles right now have, anywhere between 20 and 25 million underneath the cap. And everybody's wondering, why aren't the Eagles spending it? Why aren't they getting Jadeveon Clowney? Why aren't they getting Yannick Ngakoue or Jamal Adams? What are they just letting this money sit for? But that money could come in really handy, because any money that you have left over in one year gets carried over into next year, and it's almost like cap relief. So they could potentially have $20 million next year of extra cap because of what they carry over from this year, and it might really come in handy since they're so over. They may need some of that to mitigate their damage for next year.
Another thing that was discussed was the contracts, and this was with Andrew on ITB TV. When you look at these contracts, and if they play week one and there's no if they don't play week one and there's no season at all, are these players now free agents the next year?
It's a great question. I think, and I know Andrew referenced it, but there obviously is going, just like with baseball, and everybody is now going to ram their head against the wall. But just like with baseball, before you can do anything that's going to be different and new, you have to have your union and your owners sit down and hammer out an agreement. So DeMaurice Smith did an interview recently. I don't know with who, but he was expressing some of the concerns that the Players Union already has with some of the health and safety protocols for training camp and the season, and said that there are some questions that have to be answered. So that's just another thing that will be talked about at the negotiation table. I asked Andrew if he felt that this kind of negotiations and questions that, like you just raised, Hunter, are going to wind up being, contentious back and forth, kind of like baseball. And, he said he didn't feel it would get as acrimonious as it has been with baseball. But it remains to be seen how quickly that the league and players union can hammer out, a good solid agreement based on what they're going to know about football in 2020.
Geoff Mosher, Football at 4, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. Check out the Inside the Birds podcast at InsideTheBirds.com. And, of course, the offseason always brings up these rankings and lists and that kind of stuff. Pro Football Focus ranking all 32 rosters. What would your guess be? And if you didn't see it, if you already saw it, you can let me know, about where the Eagles roster ranked among the 32 teams. Because I was a little surprised.
I did not see it. I would assume that they have the Eagles in the top 14, if not higher.
Okay, top 14. They came in at number 9. So, do you look at the Eagles as a top 10 team, top 10 roster, going into training camp?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, I think that they're a playoff team. They can certainly win their division. And if you win the division, you're a top 6 team. I guess technically, maybe not, because a wild card team could technically be better than you. So, with the 10 teams make the playoffs, I'm all of a sudden having a brain fart, right? 10 teams, right?
Well, they switched it to, it was 6 on each side, so 12 total.
12 total, correct. So they see the Eagles as a playoff team.
They added to that, though, right?
9
They added one team in each side, but they took that away this year, I think, now. Right? Or no, was that baseball?
Right. That's another thing that may have to come. I think the extra game was going to be, playoff game was going to be next year. I'd have to go back and look. I don't remember. But if you're among the top 10, you're obviously a playoff team. I think the Eagles should be a playoff team, yeah.
All right, that goes into Andrew Smith's question from Ask ITB. How long does the Super Bowl window stay open with this roster, if it's a top 10 roster, and the upwards trend in age on the offensive line, for example? Or does having Carson Wentz being the quarterback every year make an opportunity because as good as he can be? So, in other words, because you have Wentz, does that make your Super Bowl window, or is it, the trenches making them a Super Bowl contender?
Well, I think having franchise quarterback or a quarterback as good as Carson Wentz definitely helps you keep that window alive, even when you're going through a transition. You look at Drew Brees, you look at Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, for the most part, Phillip Rivers for the most part, although the Chargers definitely had some down years, and I'll use them as an example. But for the most part, when you have a quarterback like that and you surround him with decent enough talent, your window is going to be open every year, even if you're kind of replenishing as the Eagles are doing now. But the second part of that, to me, is about the organizational structure and their ability to keep funneling in good young talent around the quarterback, both on offense and defense, as you lose veterans and replenish, which is what the Eagles are trying to do right now. And I single out, I'm not going to use the Patriots as an example because too many people do that and they're very unique. But say the Pittsburgh Steelers, for as long as Ben Roethlisberger has been healthy and been their quarterback, have been a very, very functional organization and a playoff contender almost every year. And they've won a couple of Super Bowls, they've been to a couple of Super Bowls with Mike Tomlin and won one. Because their organization is very good. They consistently bring in great wide receiver talent, great running back talent, making smart trades like getting Minkah Fitzpatrick. They had the number 1 defense last year. And for every year, for a long time, they've always in the conversation of being able to win a Super Bowl. Now, they don't win it every year, obviously, but they're always in that conversation as being a playoff team and a Super Bowl caliber team. I would say the same thing you've seen lately for the past 6-7 years with the Saints. And you've seen that with Seattle. I would use them as another example that has a very good front office that has the ability to find players in all sorts of crevices, from the draft to free agency to trade, and always be good. And then they all have very good quarterbacks. So my point is, I think you've got Carson Wentz here, so the window is open as long as he's playing well. But as you saw last year, if he's surrounded, well, actually in December he was surrounded by lesser talent at wide receiver and did better. But you've got to have a good organization, a good draft, you have to have your young talent produce because guys get costly and you have to let guys walk and make tough decisions. So the guys you draft have to play well. And Howie Roseman over the last few years has had a mixed bag. 2 years ago, the draft that brought you Avonte Maddox and Dallas Goedert, they didn't have a first-round pick. That looks pretty good. Your first picks are going to be starters next year and pretty good players. But go back to last year. Andre Dillard, we have to wait and see. Certainly not a really good start for J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, the second-round pick. A good start for Miles Sanders. But, that draft in general, we'll have to see how it works out because and same thing with this one. Jalen Rager's got to be a good player. Jack Driscoll, a fourth-round pick, would be helpful if he's a good player to give themselves a young guy on the line, and so forth, and Kevon Wallace. If these guys that from the last 2 or 3 drafts wind up being more misses than hits, then the Super Bowl window is not going to be as open.
Here's another Ask ITB question from Rick. Seems like there are mixed messages regarding the offensive line. On one hand, we hear the Eagles place a lot of value on linemen with versatility and can play multiple positions. But when it comes to moving their starters to another spot, examples, Lane Johnson to left tackle, Osei from offensive guard to center, they prefer to keep continuity on the offensive line and not move someone to weaken other spots. So which one is it?
Well, it's both, and it's really the question is not being asked in the proper context. Yes, they do like versatile linemen because they want to be able to maybe move a guy from one year to another, or if you have a backup like Big V. Big V could play tackle. Big V could play guard. He was able to cross-train at both, especially because he was a backup. He wasn't taking first-team reps all the time. So that's what they look for, a swing tackle that everybody wants coming off the bench who can play multiple positions. But when you're a starter and you're entrenched at a certain position, they want you to be able to then master that position when you're starting. So they look for versatility when they acquire you. If they're going to be a starter, they want to keep you where you're at. But they want to have the ability, if there's a long-term injury, to maybe move you over, or maybe the next year, like Todd Herman's would do this, right? Todd Herman's played right tackle, he played right guard, I think he played left guard. But it's very infrequent, I'm pretty sure, during his career that he was playing all those positions in 1 year. So the point is just to have as many guys who can do multiple things, but you don't want that to happen throughout the course of the year. You want to be able to make that decision at the beginning of each year.
All right, he's Geoff Mosher, Football at 4, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. For all the latest ITB shows, check out InsideTheBirds.com. They got YouTube, ITB TV, the ITB website, and, of course, every day, powering Football at 4. Tomorrow, Andrew DeCecco is here. Jeff's back on Wednesday, and we will empty out the Ask ITB questions that they didn't get to on another edition of Football at 4, as we are less than a month from Eagles training camp. Mosh, take care, pal.
All right, fellas. Have a good one.
And the Mosh Monday, Football at 4.